The clock on Brianna Cole's smartphone blinked. 7:52 a.m. She stood outside the red brick building housing the history and philosophy department, her heart hammering beneath her neatly ironed blouse. The morning sun cast soft, golden rays across campus, an idyllic view contrasting sharply with the dread curdling in her stomach. Today marked the culmination of 7 grueling years of study, her doctoral thesis submission. She had envisioned this day countless times. Instead of pride, all she felt now was anxiety. And one name echoed uncomfortably in her thoughts: Professor Richard Hawthorne. Professor Hawthorne was a relic of old academia, respected by peers, feared by students. In his classes, Brianna always sensed his dismissive gaze, his disapproving frown, as if he resented her very presence. Yet she had persisted. The first in her family to attend university, Brianna was accustomed to overcoming obstacles. But Hawthorne felt different, personal. Gathering her courage, Brianna climbed the polished staircase, her heels clicking rhythmically against the marble floors, the echo amplifying her unease. Approaching Professor Hawthorne's office, she knocked lightly. "Enter," came his cool, detached voice from behind the heavy wooden door. She stepped inside, instantly met by his unwelcoming eyes, sharp, icy, evaluating. Hawthorne sat behind his expansive desk, gray hair combed neatly, reading glasses perched on the tip of his nose. He looked up, raising an eyebrow as if she'd interrupted something vastly more important. "Professor Hawthorne, good morning. I'm here to submit my doctoral thesis," Brianna said, managing to keep her voice steady despite the discomfort coiling inside. Hawthorne leaned back, folding his arms. His expression remained unreadable, bordering on indifference. "Doctoral thesis? Miss Cole, surely you're aware that submitting a thesis requires certain standards," he remarked, almost bored. "I assure you, Professor, I've met all required criteria. I've reviewed every guideline, double-checked every requirement," she responded swiftly, placing her meticulously organized manuscript on his desk. He didn't reach for it. Instead, his gaze lingered on her, heavy with implication. "Let me be candid," he began, his voice smooth yet icy. "I don't think you're doctoral material. You're hard-working, certainly. But there's an intellectual rigor, a certain depth you simply lack." Brianna felt her stomach drop, disbelief filling her throat like sand. "Professor, you've never once mentioned—" He interrupted sharply, raising his hand. "This is about honesty, Miss Cole. Academia isn't for everyone." The silence thickened. Brianna stood frozen, humiliated anger boiling beneath her composed exterior. "May I ask?" she finally said quietly, her voice strained yet respectful. "Have you read the thesis?" He smiled faintly, a humorless, superior twist of lips. "I don't need to read it entirely. I've glanced through it. That's sufficient." Brianna's chest tightened painfully, heat climbing her neck, 7 years reduced to a dismissive glance. "Professor, respectfully, I'd like to request a second opinion. This research—" He cut in again, his tone final. "Miss Cole, let's save us both the embarrassment. Trust me, you're not cut out for this." The words echoed painfully around her. She'd endured sleepless nights, endless research, self-doubt, all in pursuit of excellence. And here, casually dismissed by someone who held power simply through tenure and privilege. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Very well, Professor. Thank you for your time," she said softly, exiting his office with quiet dignity. In the corridor, alone, she leaned momentarily against the wall, pulse roaring in her ears. The weight of the moment threatened to crush her. But deep down, a different feeling sparked: determination, a quiet, unyielding strength that had carried her this far. She wouldn't let him extinguish it. She would fight. Before we continue this powerful story, we're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, and we need your support. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe right now, leave a like, and tell us in the comments what you think of Dr. Hawthorne's actions so far. It truly helps us continue bringing impactful stories to life. Hours later, Brianna sat alone at her small dining table. Her thesis, a stack of papers reflecting years of labor, lay in front of her, the title stark under dim lamplight. She'd been staring at it for hours, her cell phone buzzing unnoticed with supportive messages from friends and family. Her eyes, exhausted yet fiery, scrutinized every carefully written word. Her laptop lit up with an email notification. "Meeting scheduled, Professor Hawthorne," read the stark subject line. Brianna hesitated, heart thudding uncomfortably. She clicked open, reading quickly. "Miss Cole, given your insistence, I'll allow a meeting to discuss this further. Perhaps you'll finally understand my reasoning. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., my office. Richard Hawthorne." Brianna stared at the message, her jaw tightening. The condescension in his words was evident, but there was an opening here, an opportunity to defend her work, to defend herself. At exactly 9 a.m., Brianna knocked firmly, more resolved than ever. Hawthorne's sharp "come in" cut the silence once again. She entered confidently, eyes direct, shoulders squared. "Professor, I appreciate you taking the time." "Miss Cole," he interjected coldly, eyes narrowing, "let's dispense with the formalities. I've reconsidered nothing. My position remains unchanged." Brianna kept her composure, refusing to show how deeply his blunt words cut. "With all due respect, sir, if you haven't thoroughly reviewed my work, how can you so confidently dismiss it?" Hawthorne's face hardened noticeably. "Because," he spoke slowly, condescension dripping from every syllable, "I don't think people like you fit academia. It's a reality, not a personal judgment." The room went still. Brianna's pulse pounded loudly in her ears. His words hung in the air, blatant and sharp, an unmistakable implication hidden behind polished language. Brianna stared at him, searching for words, but none came. The painful truth she had long suspected was now unambiguously revealed. She stood, gathering her papers quietly, meeting his eyes one last time. "Thank you for your clarity, Professor," she said, her voice unwavering despite her burning humiliation. Brianna left the office in silence, the echo of his words trailing her, the cold dismissal branding itself into her memory. But in the hollow echo of her footsteps, in the quiet solitude of that empty corridor, Brianna knew with newfound certainty she was done being underestimated. She was going to rewrite this story on her terms, and Professor Hawthorne was going to regret every dismissive word he'd uttered. We've reached an important turning point. To help us continue sharing meaningful stories like this one, please hit subscribe now, like this video, and tell us below, what would you do if you were Brianna? Brianna's phone buzzed continuously, each vibration another reminder of the battle she'd left behind. She stood outside the university administration building, heart pounding harder than ever, resolve deepening with every breath. Inside, the sterile white corridor smelled faintly of fresh paint and coffee, masking the tension of unseen power struggles within these walls. Professor Hawthorne's words looped endlessly in her mind. "I don't think people like you fit academia." Each repetition sharpened her determination. She moved quickly, her heels clicking firmly against the polished floor. Approaching the dean's office, she took one last steadying breath and stepped through the doorway, shoulders straight, eyes bright with quiet confidence. Dean Margaret Chen sat calmly, her office a sanctuary of ordered bookshelves and tasteful, understated decor. She glanced up immediately, setting aside her work and giving Brianna a reassuring smile. "Brianna, I'm glad you're here. Please sit," Margaret said, gesturing warmly. Thank you, Dean Chen, Brianna began, her voice firm but respectful. I appreciate your time on short notice. Margaret leaned forward slightly, her expression open and concerned. You sounded upset. Tell me exactly what happened. Brianna took a deep breath, then described every painful detail, the dismissive glances, the casual disregard for her thesis, and finally Professor Hawthorne's cruel words, echoing sharply in the quiet room. Margaret listened intently, her brow furrowing deeper as the narrative unfolded. This isn't the first complaint I've received about Richard Hawthorne, Margaret confessed, frustration coloring her voice. But it's the first one that's so explicitly troubling. Brianna, I'm deeply sorry you've had to endure this. Brianna nodded, relief washing over her. The validation, the recognition, after feeling invisible for so long, was profound. Margaret adjusted her glasses thoughtfully. Your work is exceptional. I reviewed your thesis myself last night, anticipating our meeting. Frankly, I was blown away. Thank you, Brianna said softly, emotion briefly betraying her calm exterior. Look, Margaret continued decisively, there's something else you should know. I wasn't planning to announce this just yet, but circumstances now dictate otherwise. Dr. Evans, our current head of the History and Philosophy Department, is stepping down unexpectedly due to health reasons, unsure of what she was hearing. Margaret leaned forward, eyes intent. We're actively searching for a replacement, and frankly, Brianna, you're exactly what we need. Young, innovative, passionate, and above all, resilient. This university needs fresh perspectives. We need leaders willing to challenge outdated norms. Leaders who felt firsthand what change really means. Brianna's pulse quickened, disbelief mixed with cautious hope. Dean Chen, are you suggesting? Yes, Margaret interrupted firmly, a genuine smile breaking across her face. I want you as the new head of the department. Brianna's mind raced. In mere moments the tables had turned. But fear lingered. This wasn't just a promotion. It was a statement, a challenge, and above all, an incredible responsibility. Are you sure I'm ready? Brianna whispered, her voice barely audible. Margaret smiled reassuringly, conviction unwavering. You were ready long before today. We just finally caught up. Professor Hawthorne arrived early, settling comfortably at the department meeting room's long conference table. Around him, colleagues trickled in, chatting quietly. Hawthorne glanced at his watch impatiently. The dean's mysterious meeting notice had been frustratingly vague. Dean Margaret Chen entered first, greeting everyone politely yet firmly. Hawthorne's eyes narrowed slightly when Brianna followed closely behind. Her quiet authority surprised him. Something had changed, but he couldn't pinpoint what. Good morning, everyone, Margaret began, standing at the head of the table. I have important news. As you're aware, Dr. Evans has resigned his position due to health concerns. After careful deliberation, we've selected an extraordinary replacement. Curious murmurs filled the room. Hawthorne glanced at Brianna, noticing the calm confidence in her posture, unease prickling at the back of his neck. Brianna Cole, Margaret announced clearly, will step into the role as head of the History and Philosophy Department, effective immediately. The room fell silent. Hawthorne's jaw tightened visibly, disbelief etched plainly on his face. His eyes met Brianna's for a fraction of a second, hers calm, unyielding. Brianna rose gracefully, addressing the assembled faculty with a measured, professional tone. Thank you, Dean Chen. I'm honored to accept this position. My commitment is to foster an environment where everyone feels valued, heard, and respected. I believe strongly in transparency, fairness, and, above all, inclusion. Hawthorne felt a hot rush of indignation. How had he misjudged this so badly? His pulse quickened with humiliation and anger as Brianna continued confidently. In the coming weeks, Brianna said, voice steady, commanding the room's full attention, I'll personally review departmental processes to ensure equity and meritocracy guide every decision. And if anyone here has questions, my door will always remain open. As the meeting ended, colleagues warmly congratulated Brianna, shaking her hand enthusiastically, offering genuine smiles. Hawthorne lingered awkwardly, unsure of his next move. He finally approached her cautiously, discomfort obvious in every step. Miss Cole, he began hesitantly, his voice unfamiliar even to himself. She turned calmly, facing him directly, her voice quiet yet piercing. It's Dr. Cole, Professor Hawthorne. He swallowed painfully, his arrogance crumbling under the weight of her composed dignity. Dr. Cole, he corrected awkwardly. Perhaps we got off on the wrong foot. I'm open to discussing ways to work together. Brianna nodded, polite yet firm. Professor Hawthorne, moving forward, professionalism and respect will guide our interactions. I look forward to your cooperation in improving our department. She turned and walked confidently toward her new office, leaving Hawthorne alone in the room. Pride wounded, power diminished. The words he'd used to undermine Brianna now echoed bitterly around him, a stark reminder of the irreversible damage done by ignorance and prejudice. He had underestimated her strength, her resilience. Now everything had changed, and Hawthorne realized the painful truth. The authority he'd so arrogantly wielded was no longer his. The student he once sought to silence had returned, stronger, wiser, and unquestionably in control. Brianna settled comfortably into her new office, sunlight pouring gently through large windows that overlooked the sprawling university campus. Her gaze lingered briefly over the stacks of papers neatly arranged on her desk, reflecting her commitment to fairness and transparency. Despite her outward composure, deep within she knew the true test was just beginning. She quickly set to work, reviewing departmental procedures, holding private conversations with faculty and students, and quietly gathering the evidence needed to build a culture of genuine equity. As she peeled back layers of outdated processes, a troubling pattern emerged. Professor Hawthorne's harsh grading methods and questionable evaluation practices weren't isolated incidents, but were symptomatic of deeper biases embedded within the institution. Conversations with colleagues painted a complicated portrait. While some praised Hawthorne's scholarship, many quietly confessed discomfort over his methods. Brianna found student testimonies in dusty archives filed and forgotten, young voices silenced or dismissed, their dreams often halted by Hawthorne's arbitrary judgment. It was unsettling, yet undeniably motivating. Within weeks, whispers of Brianna's quiet revolution spread through campus. Students felt emboldened, faculty more accountable. The department flourished under her steady, empathetic leadership. Its atmosphere transformed from intimidation to inspiration. Professor Hawthorne, however, watched quietly from the sidelines, pride bruised and authority fractured. Yet despite his embarrassment, something within him, a stubborn resistance rooted deeply in ego, prevented genuine self-reflection. He held his classes rigidly, still attempting to wield control, clinging desperately to past influence. Finally, after careful consideration, Brianna knew it was time for a difficult conversation. She invited Hawthorne to her office late one afternoon. As he entered, visibly uncomfortable, Brianna gestured gently toward a chair opposite her desk. "Professor, please sit." He took the chair, posture rigid, eyes carefully avoiding hers. Brianna watched him quietly for a moment before speaking calmly, her voice steady yet compassionate. "Professor Hawthorne, I've carefully reviewed your methods along with many concerns raised by students and faculty. There is clear evidence of discriminatory practices that cannot continue." His jaw tightened. He inhaled sharply, attempting a defense. "I've always held students to high standards." Standards should inspire excellence, Brianna interjected gently yet firmly, not reinforce prejudice. Excellence and equity can coexist. He exhaled slowly, his expression softening slightly as he absorbed her words. For the first time, she saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Professor, Brianna continued quietly, I truly believe that meaningful change comes from honest self-reflection. I'm offering you an opportunity, not punishment, but growth. Mandatory training in equity and implicit bias combined with supervision of your grading practices moving forward. His face flushed, indignation briefly flashing, then quickly fading into resignation. And if I refuse? Brianna met his gaze evenly, her voice gentle yet unyielding. Then I'll be forced to recommend disciplinary measures to the dean. Change isn't optional. It's necessary. He looked away, tension thickening the air. Silence stretched between them, each heartbeat marking an invisible struggle. Finally he spoke softly, almost to himself. Perhaps I've overlooked some things. The admission, quiet and uncertain, hung powerfully between them. Brianna sensed the fragile seed of accountability, a small yet critical shift. I think you have, she said carefully, and admitting it is the first step toward correcting it. He rose, visibly humbled. I'll participate willingly. Maybe there's still something I can learn. As he left her office, Brianna exhaled slowly, relief washing over her. Change was complex and slow, but real progress had begun. In the months that followed, Brianna's quiet revolution took root deeply. Training sessions flourished, honest conversations blossomed, and a palpable sense of inclusion permeated the campus. Students previously silenced now proudly voiced their dreams, confident their achievements mattered. Professor Hawthorne attended each training, initially reluctantly, but eventually with genuine interest. Brianna watched from afar as he softened, his harsh exterior cracking, to reveal a surprisingly vulnerable individual. She soon noticed students leaving his office encouraged rather than discouraged. A shift was undeniably taking place. On the final day of term, Brianna hosted a department-wide forum to discuss ongoing improvements and future goals. Faculty and students alike crowded into the auditorium, anticipation heavy in the air. As Brianna spoke, she shared openly about her journey, the challenges faced, and the vital importance of confronting bias directly. She urged collective responsibility, reminding everyone that academia's true strength was diversity, empathy, and continuous learning. At the conclusion, unexpected applause erupted, heartfelt and sincere, echoing warmly through the room. Brianna stood humbly accepting their gratitude. Amid the applause, her eyes caught Professor Hawthorne's gaze across the room. He stood slowly, the crowd quieting as he cleared his throat nervously. Dr. Cole, he began, voice shaky yet sincere, I want to publicly acknowledge my mistakes and the pain I caused through ignorance and me personally, that true intelligence is humility and openness. Thank you. The room fell silent, moved by his honesty. Brianna felt tears prickle her eyes, emotion swelling within her. She nodded respectfully, smiling gently at the man who had once tried to silence her dreams but had now embraced profound change. Afterward, as faculty and students dispersed, Brianna found herself briefly alone with Hawthorne. He approached cautiously, extending a tentative hand. Dr. Cole, Brianna, I can never fully undo my past actions, but I'm genuinely committed to making amends. Your strength inspired this change. She accepted his handshake, warmth bridging the painful gap of their past. Your willingness to learn, Professor, gives me hope. As he left, she stood quietly, absorbing the magnitude of the moment. Change had been slow, difficult, yet undeniably real. Later that evening, Brianna returned home, quietly reflecting on her extraordinary journey. Her thesis, once dismissed, now stood proudly framed on her living room wall, a symbol not just of academic achievement, but of resilience, justice, and triumph. Her phone buzzed gently. Messages from students, faculty, and even community members poured in, filled with appreciation, encouragement, and thanks. But one particular message caught her eye. "I was about to quit academia forever, but your courage made me believe again. Thank you, Dr. Cole. You've changed my life." She closed her eyes briefly, overwhelmed yet grateful. Her own struggle had blossomed into hope, igniting belief and possibility for so many others. It had never been solely about her. It was always about building a future where everyone's dreams mattered. As Brianna finally rested, deep contentment filled her heart. The work wasn't over. True change required constant vigilance and courage. Yet she knew this moment signified a victory worth celebrating, a step toward genuine progress and equality. In the quiet peace of that night, Brianna knew she'd rewritten her story, and in doing so, had helped rewrite the stories of countless others, ensuring their voices would never again go unheard. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey. We're on our way to 1,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. Please subscribe right now, leave a like, and comment below. What inspired you most about Brianna's incredible story? Every subscription helps us keep bringing impactful stories to life.